All right. Hey, welcome to the show, Dr. Will Cole.
My goodness, my friend. Thank you so much for having me. And this is so cool. I'm really excited to be talking today.
Well, we got two Pittsburgh guys here, born and raised, and we want to make Pittsburgh the healthiest city in America. And we would love this to be a maybe a stepping stone for other cities. But hey, we're the city of champions. We
That's right.
gotta make health. Without health, what kind of city of champion city are we? So just tell us a little bit about, what you're doing for fun, family, kids, pets at home. What gets you up in the morning?
I have two kids, as you know. For people that don't know, I have a son, Solomon, my daughter, Shiloh. At this point, they are 13 and 11. I can't believe that. Wow. And yeah, my wife, amazing wife, Amber, married for about at this point, like 16 years, nearly 16 years. And yeah, so pet wise, we have two golden doodles. And my daughter recently, because my kids are homeschooled, she got this tadpole. So we now have a pet frog, became a frog already. Yeah, so that's my life. I'm just like, all I do is I immerse myself with my patients during the day, and then I go home and hang with them. You probably can relate with that. So I pretty much that's what I do: hang out with them, and I see patients.
It's funny is every passionate health doctor, and maybe it's just this is the world we're in. We live and breathe this all the time. This isn't
Yeah,
a show for us. We do it at the office, we do it at home, we do it in the store, on
yeah.
vacation, on an airplane. This is just our life. So you're going to hear some amazing information from Dr. Will. We're going to dive into his book, Ketotarian, and like, what is that? But let's first jump into the functional medicine. I mean, this has been a growing area for probably a really long time, but it's starting to catch a lot more traction. We're in a world right now that people are getting tired of meds. They're not sure what to do. They try the keto diet. It doesn't work. They try the paleo diet. It doesn't work so well. So then they try fitness and running on a treadmill for an hour. We're confused. So let's first start with, what is functional medicine, and how did you even get to that point that this was a driving point for you?
So as you know, I grew up in a home that was interested in health and wellness, and so that informed me very early on of how I saw the world and what impact that food and natural health and being preventative could do for somebody's life. And then I knew that early on that I wanted to be formally trained in this space of health and wellness. So I went to Southern California University of Health Sciences, which is sort of an integrative health school. They have an acupuncture, oriental medicine program at the school. They have a nurse practitioner program. They have doctor of chiropractic. They have a lot of different modalities there and different schools of thought. And there was a guy who had gone to my school. He was older than I was. His name was Datis Karazian. And he was talking about this exciting field of healthcare called functional medicine. And that evolved into, me wanting less to be about just general health and wellness, but really focused on functional medicine. I really felt like I found exactly how I wanted to help people. And I felt like that was my lane and my passion in my mind. And to your question, what is functional medicine? It's this amalgamation, I think, of the best of Western medicine, which is running labs and being evidence-based, and then the best of alternative health, which is getting to the root cause and not just covering it up with Band-Aids and medications and wanting to find out why somebody's sick in the first place. So that is what functional medicine is. The main differences between functional medicine and mainstream medicine: number one, we interpret labs using a thinner reference range. So anybody that's listening will know when they get their number on their lab, they're going to have their number, and then they're going to have this reference range. Well, we get this reference range on whether a Quest or LabCorp or any other, your doctor's labs, from a statistical bell curve average of that population of that specific lab. So it's not standardized. You'll go to another lab and you'll see that lab reference range will vary from lab to lab. But people that are predominantly going to labs are people with health problems. So there's a lot of people that go to the doctor and they know they don't feel good. They're struggling with weight loss resistance or fatigue or hormonal problems or autoimmune issues. And they'll go to the doctor and the doctor says, these labs are fine. Everything's fine. Here's an antidepressant. You're just depressed, or you're just getting older, or you're a new mom, or you just need to lose weight. All these sort of well-intentioned reasons as to how somebody could be having symptoms despite quote unquote normal labs. But just because something's common doesn't necessarily mean it's normal. And comparing yourself to people that are going through health problems is no way for you to know what's going on for your health and how you can feel your best. So in functional medicine, we're looking at a thinner an interval of numbers, a thinner X to Y interval within that larger reference range of where optimal, vibrant wellness resides, which is that tighter range, the optimal functional range, the optimal healthy range. So we are interpreting labs that are done currently looking at optimal health, not just the lab's reference range, to give you the answers as to what's going on with your health. The second thing, we are running more comprehensive labs. So it's based off of a health history, but it's looking at things like underlying gut microbiome issues or toxicity issues or hormonal imbalances or chronic infections to get objective data as to why somebody is feeling the way that they do. Because as you know, nobody's sick from a medication deficiency. So let's actually find why this person has these set of symptoms. So we're getting multiple labs perspective from their vantage point. What the heck's going on here? And then the third thing we do differently in functional medicine is we realize we're all created differently. And there's not a cookie cutter, one size fits all approach to getting healthy. And I could have 100 people with fatigue, and what's driving fatigue for one person isn't necessarily driving fatigue for the next person. So maybe for one person, it's a toxicity issue. The next person, it's a biotoxin problem like mold. The next person, it's a hormonal imbalance. The next person, it's a nutrient deficiency. Or maybe it's a confluence, like a perfect storm of factors to take into consideration. So it's not easy to just look at the check engine light and say, well, everybody with the check engine light gets the same treatment, because that's not necessarily true. We have to look upstream to these problems. So that's in short what functional medicine is. So we use food as medicine, we use natural medicines, we use those medications when needed, and lifestyle changes, and really to be evidence-based but tailored to the individual.
Wow, that was, we could probably just elaborate on that for hours. And one thing you said, it's common, but it's not normal. We say that in our office all the time, because patients come in and say, oh, I have headaches, and they brush it off like they're saying, they're 60 years old and they have a little bit of gray hair coming in. And I say, because my hair is turning gray. And I said, what do you mean you have headaches? How often? Well, 2 or 3 times a week. Actually, like, it's normal. And we say, look, this may be common, but it is not normal to have 2 to 3 headaches a week. And it stops them in their track, and they go, never thought of it that way. And when, something you also said, sickness is not medicine deficiency. We're not lacking. I remember hearing this years ago, you don't have a headache because you're deficient in aspirin. You fill that void. And we're in a society that when you were elaborating on the testing you do and specific individual, that is not common in testing these days. It's a general test. Hey, test or came back within the range, go home, it's in your head. Or here's a drug, we give this drug to everyone, so you're going to just take this and see how you feel. If not, we'll give you another until we can make your symptoms diminish enough for you to feel okay. And I know the way you look at it and the way I look at it, that's not okay with me. I don't want to feel okay. I want to be healthy. So when let's get into this a little deeper. When a patient would seek you out or seek out functional medicine, compared to their physician, they trust their physician, but they're getting tired. They're tired of just taking another drug. And I'm sure you see a lot of patients come to you that have been exhausted, and they come and they say, look, I want a different approach. What would be a starting point? How would you, what kind of tests do you run, and how do you look at this differently than the standard medical doctor? Maybe go through a case study.
Yeah, sure. So the standard model of care is largely trained to diagnose a disease and match it with a medication. So they're running the labs that are needed to give out the appropriate medications. And you're talking about the standard, whether that's a PCP or, GP, or it's an endocrinologist or rheumatologist. They're running their set of labs and their specific biomarkers that they're running. And then this medicinal matching game is typically what goes on. So everybody with that same ICD-10 diagnosis code is given X, Y, and Z, and it's the same medications that everybody else with the same diagnosis code is given. It's that sort of algorithmic approach to healthcare. And look, there's some people that are served because of that. And by all means, in functional medicine, we're not anti-medication. There's a place for that. There's some people that need medications that are alive because of that. We just ask the question, what is your most effective option that causes you the least amount of side effects? If a medication fits that criteria, then maybe it's the best thing for you. But a lot of people, their medications don't fit that criteria. It's not the most effective option. There's a lot of potential side effects to it, but yet that's the only thing that's even given as an option. So I'm all for people having the options. If they want to choose that, then choose that. But they don't even know they don't have agency over their health. It's just told, take this pill, see you in 6 months. That's it. There's nothing else you can do. So I just want people to have options. And I think things are changing slowly. But the Cleveland Clinic has a functional medicine center, and that's who IFM, who trained myself and my team, that's who's trained the doctors there. So I think things are changing. I mean, these major institutions are seeing the statistics of how they can actually save on healthcare by getting people healthy and not just piling more medications on it. It's unsustainable. It's bankrupting our country, and it's bankrupting people's quality of life too. Mm-hmm. So I think that our approach really starts with asking a lot of questions, really listening to the person, because a lot of times there's this God complex with their doctor where they don't even really care to listen to the patient. Just take this, don't ask too many questions because that'll be threatening. And it's just, they're not even being heard. And people just want to be heard because they're the ones going through this. So for me, it's a lot of listening, a lot of asking questions at first. Spend about an hour and a half initially, just kind of digging deep into their case, like what's relevant to their case. And then we run labs to look more extensively. So to use an example, like a case study example, for example, if someone's going through a thyroid problem and maybe she has fatigue, maybe she's weight loss resistance, maybe she's having sort of these flare-ups, she's wired and tired, she's like anxious but exhausted. And at that point, you go to a standard model of care, they're going to typically just give antidepressants, or they're going to give a Xanax or some anxiety medication. And maybe they'll run basic thyroid markers like TSH, a thyroid stimulating hormone, and maybe a T4. And if TSH is above 4.5 or so, they'll give her levothyroxine or Synthroid or something like that, a thyroid replacement hormone. And that's basically going to be where it's at. So whether she gets better or even if she doesn't get better, that's kind of where it's left to be. Because when she comes back on the checkup, if she's still feeling poorly, they're going to say, look, we've done every test we could. There's really nothing for you. And they just tinker around with dosages of the antidepressants or, refer out to a specialist. That's how that's worked largely in the standard model of care. But in a functional medicine setting, we'd listen to them for a long time. We'd get their health history comprehensively, and we run more comprehensive labs. So specific to the thyroid, you can't hang your hat on one piece of, one biomarker in a lab and say, well, that's the totality of what she's going through. So we're running a full thyroid panel. That's things like TSH and total T4 and total T3, both the free forms of the thyroid hormones like free T3, free T4, the thyroid antibodies like thyroid peroxidase, thyroid globulin antibody, and reverse T3. Because the majority of low thyroid function in the West is autoimmune in nature. It's Hashimoto's disease or Graves' disease or something like that. Or it has an autoimmune component. The point is you cannot be overly reductionist and say that you can understand the thyroid just based off of a TSH. So we want to look at all the thyroid markers to look, maybe it's an overconversion of T4 to T3. Maybe it's an underconversion. Maybe it is autoimmunity. Maybe it's a high reverse T3. There's a lot of explanations. And a lot of those things I just mentioned can still be there despite a normal TSH. So, and then we talk about what's even normal, right? I mean, it's just the functional optimal range for a TSH is about 0.45 to 2. The lab reference range is going to be about 0.45 to 4.5. So it's not just the deciphering of the labs, it's running the appropriate labs And that's just the thyroid. You have to look at the gut, and you have to look at toxicity. You have to look at other variables too. And that's where a good comprehensive health history comes into play. So we want to get as much information as we can within reason to find out what are the root components as to why they feel the way that they do.
And you hit something too that I think many people have never even thought about. Is it's like our body, it works with each other unit, organ, hormone, gland, all collectively, globally. So my heart it doesn't just work independently. My gut, my lungs, my oxygen levels, my movement, my nerve system. When I understood chiropractic and I understood the nerve system as being the primary connection to everything, I realized at that point, because my dad died at age 50 of heart failure, and I remember saying, I'm not going to happen to me. I'm not going to do it. So I thought I'm going to be a good fitness guy. So I went out and I was studying health and phys ed at Slippery Rock. I went on to teach school until I went into chiropractic. And my whole thing was, I'm going to stay as fit as I can. I didn't know much about nutrition. I was learning it, but there wasn't much back then that there is now. And when I understood the principles of chiropractic, not the chiropractic, the adjustment, the principles that the body heals from within, and the nerve system connects everything, and whatever we give it and supply it, it can utilize. So if I give it a Snickers bar, so I still play active rugby, and I'm playing with these 20 and 30-year-olds. I've got to work out harder than I did when I was 20. I'm 30 years older than these guys. And if I give it Snicker bars and sugar and inflammatory foods, my joints are going to feel horrible. My heart's not going to function optimally. My lungs aren't going to process properly. My gut's not going to work. I'm going to end up getting hurt. So and before we dive into your book, explain and maybe the principle of, can the body heal from within? And we'll dive into your book and nutrition and food and how that supplies and what you're doing in your office and around the world. Can the body heal from within? And what's the principle behind that from your point of view?
Yeah, so absolutely. I think the body wants homeostasis. The body wants to survive and to thrive. So a lot of what we do is giving the body what it needs to regain homeostasis, or removing the things that's preventing it from having homeostasis. And another word for functional medicine is integrative medicine. And that's where I see there's a place for conventional medicine. There's a place for, of course, emergency medicine. There's a place for chiropractic. There's a place for acupuncture. There's a place for homeopathy, all these different things that I feel like people need to find what's your most effective option that causes them the least amount of side effects. The body, all of these things that we're talking about, different fields of healthcare, their goal should be to remove the things that are keeping them from homeostasis, or give them things that their body needs to regain homeostasis. So that's definitely the case of what I see. The body is amazingly resilient. I see people that were just counted out as just, there's nothing left for them. Their lot in life was to be sick and to have a growing list of medications. And that was basically it, reclaim their life. And I've for the past 11 years, it never ceases to amaze me what the body's able to do. And people, I think of one patient, something that she said to me was stuck with me all these years later. She said, I was planning my funeral when I met you. Now I'm planning vacations with my grandkids. And that's what's at stake here for people like this. It's like they're told there's nothing you can do. You're going to be dead if you, at this rate, or you're just taking these medications and you're waiting to die, or you can do something different to see something different. So it's amazing to me what the body's able to do. So yeah, how can you not get excited about that, right? Cool.
And when you see the cases that the lives restored, sometimes within a short period of time. I just told a guy today, his neck was just really killing him. He's young, in his 20s, and he's feeling amazing within just a few visits. And I said, this problem has been building up in his body for about 10 years. And I said, even though it took 10 years to get there, it's only going to take a few weeks to a couple months to heal. And he looked at me and Wow. I'm like, yeah, thank God. I said, because if it took 10 years to get out of this mess that you got into, we would never do it. And I think the one thing, let's get into some of the answers here, because I hear it all the time. I'm sure you do too. Doc, I know I have all these health problems. I went to my doctor, my physician, and they said, well, you just need to lose 50 pounds, or you just need to get healthy. Start walking for an hour a day. I had one patient, she was walking an hour a day and she wasn't losing any weight. So she went back to the doctor, still feeling horrible. And the doctor said, well, if an hour isn't working, try two. And I thought, that's insane. First
Yeah.
of all, how do you have the time? And that's not even the right physiological approach to health and weight loss. But these are the answers they're getting. So they're saying, well, keto diet, I tried eating fat all day and I got sick. I tried paleo, and so and they go to extreme. All I ate was a salad. And I'm like, you didn't eat anything else. You just ate a salad. And they're like, yeah, it didn't work for me. I'm like, well, it wouldn't work for me either. You got to have a plan. And it's not eating. I always tell patients, my diet isn't eating pine cones from East Asia. It's real food, but it's real food. So let's just dive into your book, and then we can guide it from here, because I think
Yeah.
it's interesting. I have not read your book yet. I have so many things on my plate. I'm like, okay, that's on my list. It's going to come. But ketotarian, that's a whole new
Yeah.
term for a lot of people. Let's dive into this and
Yeah.
what diet is, where your book, how the heck did you have time to write a book? Because I know you don't have too much free time, but let's dive into this.
Yeah, and since then I have a second book out too, The Inflammation Spectrum. So I
Mm.
love writing. So it's just I'm a nerd and I like writing, I like reading, and that's typically what I do. And like you said, when you're so passionate about something, these books are just a natural extension of my love of functional medicine, my love of my patients, and kind of seeing how awesome this field of healthcare can be for people. So Ketotarian was my first book, and it was really, it's my made up word. It's a sort of amalgamation of being the best of being clean, plant-based, the best of being keto or fat adapted, and this sort of alchemy between the two of them. So it's a clean keto diet, and how I advocate it in the book. There's vegan keto recipes, there's vegetarian keto and pescatarian keto options. So wild caught fish, fresh seafood, but still predominantly plant-based. But the way that I advocate it in the book is to go 8 weeks, mostly plant-based keto. And there's like half of the book is recipes and pretty pictures and meal plans and that kind of stuff. But then from there, this is the heart of functional medicine. It's bio-individuality. What works for one person may not be needed for the next person. So I teach different ways to use the tool of ketosis. Why are we using it? It's become a fat burner. It's to burn fat for fuel. So most people are stuck in this sugar burning mode. They're hangry, they're irritable, they have insatiable cravings, and it's like kindling on a fire. You're going to put kindling on the fire. It's only going to burn for so long. You have to keep putting kindling on throughout the day. And that's the people's hangriness and cravings. And they always have to maintain that blaze because of the kindling. But the alternative is burning fat for fuel, and that's putting a log on the fire. It's more sustainable. So the reason why we are tapping into nutritional ketosis is to burn fat for fuel. So it's a way to become a fat burner, but it's also a beta hydroxybutyrate is the ketone that our body makes in ketosis. And it is not just a way to burn fat. It is a epigenetic modulator or signaling molecule to lower inflammation, which you and I know. For people that don't know, inflammation is really the commonality between so many different health problems. So it's our body's own natural, God-given, endogenous anti-inflammatory molecule that lowers inflammation, like NF-kappa B and the NLRP3 inflammasome, all these pro-inflammatory cytokines that are high in a lot of people. So it's a natural anti-inflammatory way of eating, and it upregulates things like basically pro-longevity, pro-antioxidant pathways like the AMPK pathway, the NRF2 pathway, not to get super nerdy, but basically just pro-longevity, decrease inflammation, pro-autophagy, which is like cellular recycling, like a anti-aging, anti-disease pathway in the body. So a lot of cool stuff, sciencey stuff, but it's just makes you feel good. So you do that for 8 weeks, and then I recommend different ways for people to use this tool. For one person, they can do a cyclical ketotarian, where they'll do like 3 to 5 days, like high fat, low carb, and then moderate their carbs 2 to 4 days out of the week. So that's going to be somewhere, and I teach this in the book, but for people that want to know what that looks like, it's about under 50 grams of carbs during the keto days, and then moderate the carbs 75 to 150 grams of carbs. And they do a cyclical ketotarian approach with, increasing things like sweet potatoes or white rice or any types of rice or fruit or something like that. But they can go in and out of ketosis, but they built that metabolic flexibility over those initial 8 weeks of going ketotarian. And then some people do it seasonally from, historically humans would have done that a lot, is they would have eaten seasonally. So in the summer, they would have had more fresh fruits and tubers and things like that. And then in the winter, they would go more keto. And some people can find their carb sweet spot and moderate their carbs after the initial 8 weeks. So that's what I teach in the book. Because a lot of people go keto a really dirty way. They think they can have bacon and butter all day long, and they're like, it's all working for me. Just because something's high fat, low carb, just because something's keto doesn't necessarily mean it's healthy. You can make any old junk food keto, doesn't mean you're going to be healthy for it. So I wanted to teach a clean, healthy way to go keto. And then from there, go out of ketosis in a clean way, but still use it as a tool to progress your health. So that's what ketotarian is all about.
That frustrates me when I hear these people on these diets and they'll say, well, I'm on a keto diet or whatever diet they're on. I mean, there's so many. And I ask, like, what are some of the things? And they'll tell me, and if even one thing they'll say, well, I'm allowed to drink Diet Coke. That'd be a crazy example, but something with aspartame or a neurotoxin in it. And I look at them, I say, who recommended that? Like, what's this diet? But I'm getting good results. And I said, well, you can get good results from poison. You could probably snort cocaine and lose weight. It just because we're getting some type of temporary result doesn't mean it's healthy. So with your in and out, this cyclic type approach, how hard is it for people to, if they were just to start with a book and say, okay, my diet is horrible. They know it. Everyone knows their diet's bad. Once their eyes are open, even a crack, they realize, okay, it's bad. I just don't know what to do. Mm-hmm. Is it manageable by just reading the book to begin this process? And do they have to dive in 100%, or can it be like steps to walk through to get to that point that they're not eating sugar in a day? Because a lot of people say, oh, I'm addicted to bread. They'll tell me that all the time. I'm addicted to bread and carbs. And I laugh. I'm like, we all are. If you put it in your mouth, you're going to crave more. So you just have to stay away from it, or at least have a high-end nutrient-based diet. So if you do slip up, it's not dangerous. Where their 80% is inflammatory, and then they try to support it with a side salad. So how does that, like a real life approach, they're coming in, they get the book, and we're going to have all your resources on the page. I encourage them to read the book. I'm really excited about the new book too, about inflammation, because we know, and we're in this COVID-19 mess right now, and inflammation is a sign of dysfunction, and dysfunction is a sign of immune weakness, and immune weakness makes us vulnerable to COVID-19, but everything. People say, well, I don't want to get COVID-19. And I said, well, I've been doing this for 30 years. I'm not afraid of this. I built my immunity. We should be able to withstand that, but we have to look at this globally. And I know you agree, and maybe we can get some practical steps here for listeners, that let's start this journey now. If there is a flu season in the fall, if you're around a virus next spring, it's going to come. But how do we build our immunity? And it is with reducing inflammation. It's building it. And you have to start now, people. You can't wait and say, well, that's a cute talk. This doctor, he sounds really good. I'll get his book at Christmas time. You need to dive in and start chipping away, because every little step you add in is one step closer to health. So what would be your advice? They get your book. What can they expect if they are really addicted to the sugars and the fats and the bad foods?
Yeah. Well, I would say they have to lean into it, right? It depends on where their starting point is. I see some people on social media, they'll tag me in things, use the hashtag ketotarian or something like that. And they're not necessarily in ketosis, but because they are implementing more of these foods into their life, they're noticing improvements. going back to how amazingly resilient the body is. You give it a little bit, sometimes it can do amazing things. But it's not all or nothing. I don't want people to feel like they have to be perfect. But at the same time, like you said, the majority has to be the good stuff. The majority has to be the good stuff. And I would say to really become a fat burner, you kind of have to put in the intentional. This is not hard work. It's about shifting your perspective. This isn't about being punitive or saying, oh, these are the things I can't have. It's really shifting your paradigm from that sort of punitive, dogmatic way of eating. This isn't about dieting. This is about using food as medicine and shifting your perspective to, whoa, how can I care for my body enough? How can I love my body enough? How can I respect my body enough to feed it good things? And when people start feeling good, I find that invariably this tipping point in their awareness shifts to, well, I love feeling better more than I miss that food that made me feel really lousy. So it's like, and even when they randomly will have it, they will take inventory of that and say, whoa, like that did not make me feel good at all. I want to go back to feeling great. So that's the freedom and the food piece that I want people to find, is not becoming obsessive or orthorexic or like this like obsessive eater. It's not about that. It's about really just fueling your body with things that make you feel great. And that's the ethos of what I infuse in the books, of just giving people that paradigm shift. Because dieting, really, people don't need another diet. People don't need another diet in our culture, but they need a paradigm shift to give them tools to feel good.
Yeah, I agree. If the mind shifts, all else follows. And
Yeah.
I always tell people, if you were really interested to get healthy, you don't need a doctor. You can research it. Even if you have to go through 20 Google searches, you'll find the answers to your questions if you keep diving in deep. You can't read the headlines of an ad and just say, well, I'm just going to go keto. Many people don't even know what it means, or paleo. They had a salad, they had olives on it because it came from the Mediterranean. So they think, well, that's paleo. But if you keep diving, it has to come with a mind shift. Let me ask you this. This is the $1 million question. Is there something we can do as doctors? Is there something we can do as a podcast, sending this information out to give listeners, to help them with that tipping point, some mental acuity that says, that's what I needed? Is there something we can do collectively that can help push them and make them want to be more aware?
Well,
That's a tough one.
I think it's having conversations like this. So many people, like, they're just so busy and they're so stuck on autopilot. Like it's like human nature in many ways, that when you start raising awareness like this show is, and start educating people on the fact that there is actually options in their health for them to do on their own. I think this can be an awakening, an aha moment for people to, whoa, I didn't even know this was a thing. I do feel tired. I do struggle with these health problems. And then they can start to educate themselves and empower themselves. And what you're doing on this show, to me, is this beginning state for people, because people can start learning and informing themselves to start taking action for their health and start having agency over their wellness, because many people aren't even thinking about that.
I'm glad you said that. I battle that in my practice, in my mind all the time. I'm like, I've got to reach these people. I've got to push them in that direction. And so I keep talking, keep saying, and then people do. And I remember even shifting from where I was and going into chiropractic, I just had these little subtle shifts in events that I started to see things a little differently. And I wanted more for my health. So because I had an opportunity, and everyone who's listening to the show, you get Dr. Cole's book, you read the book, and you study it. I tell this about every resource we get. You just don't read it and put it on your shelf and say, that was a cute book. You use it as a resource. We've taken, and I know, Dr. Will, you spent your whole life getting to this point to write a book, but you spend hours and hours and hours, thousands of hours to get the ideas on paper. You can't do that on a weekend Google search watching Facebook.
Yeah.
You can't even do it in the classroom. I'm sure you learned so much more after school, as I did, by continuing learning, diving deeper, because now we have a platform and a base to learn from. So as we start heading into wrapping this up, let's go to 3 powerful things that people can implement that would give them the biggest return on investment. If you had to say, you get three, biggest thing they could do and biggest return on investment, what would those three be?
Oh, that's good. So I would say number one, decrease the amount of things that cause inflammation in the body. In my second book, The Inflammation Spectrum, is really a deep dive into that. And like, we talk about the inflammation spectrum concept in Ketotarian because I mentioned that ketone, beta-hydroxybutyrate, lowers inflammation. But so decrease the things that cause inflammation. So that what I call the core four in the second book are grains, added sugar, industrial seed oils like canola oil, vegetable oil, cottonseed oil, soybean oil, and conventional dairy. So that would be the core four foods. Those are the four foods that cause inflammation in most people. We all have different tolerances to some things, and we have a nuanced conversation in the book. Some people do fine with certain grains. Some people do fine with a little bit more sugar. I'm not saying everybody's equal. Everybody's different. Everybody's equal, but not everybody has the same equal responses to these issues. Some people are more reactive or sensitive to these things than others. But so decrease the core four, increase the things that will calm inflammation, things like healthy fats. So that's olives, extra virgin olive oil, avocados, wild caught fish, grass-fed beef. Increase the healthy fats because your brain is 60% fat, your immune system needs healthy fat. Healthy fats don't stimulate insulin like carbohydrates and too much protein do as well. So that is a good thing. So that's number two. And third, I would say bring acts of stillness into your life. So stressing about all this stuff or stress in general is going to raise inflammation levels too and really impact your health in a negative way. So whether that's prayer, meditation, getting out in nature, there's some exciting research coming out of Japan and South Korea, what they call Shinrin-yoku, which is basically forest bathing. And it is really cool. There's something as simple as getting out in nature. People may know that intuitively, but to see the science behind it and how God's creation can really calm your stress hormones, lower inflammation levels, be really restorative. We came from we're part of creation. And so much of modernity separates ourselves from creation. So to connect with creation, again, is a really restorative act in and of itself. And you can pair that with exercise in nature or be outside. So all of these things, those are three things. If we had to whittle down to three, I would say those things.
And it's hard. We could take those three and talk for hours, which we have. I've done workshops on them. The interesting thing when you talked about active stillness, I've never heard it said that way because we hear stress, de-stress, just breathe. I think that is a massive part of our being alive. And in our environment, when we're sitting at a computer, staring at a computer screen, horrible, inactive, hunched over, poor posture, in a closed room, it's horrendous. So when I have a farm and I have, we're up to 15 Angus cows, which I never dreamed that I'd have all these cows, grass-fed, everything's grass-fed, 49 sheep, chickens, goats, ducks. And I'm like, what happened? How did I get here? But when I go home and I'll go through a walk, on my land, I'll go to see the cows and sheep. There's something about connecting, and you're right there, and it takes you away from that stress. And there's an app I use in the morning. It's called it's a heart rate variability app, and I hook it up and it measures my heart rate to see if I'm in a calm, relaxed mood, and I breathe for about 10 to 15 minutes, and I keep watching that because if I can decrease my stress levels, then I know that I'm getting healthier. And the same thing there is. If you decrease the grains and the sugars and the bad oils and the dairy, it doesn't matter if you have tests for this yet. That can come, but that will globally, universally, that will affect everyone in some way, some dramatically, but everyone will improve, increasing your healthy fats and getting some peace, some love. I love that. I think that's sound advice. And if you just did those three and you never did anything else, you never went to a functional medicine doctor or came to see my office or anything, you would be better off. But just imagine, I think you would agree here. You start with this and you get a glimmer of hope, a little taste of, Oh my gosh, I slept better than I have in 8 years. I can smell again. I can breathe again. My knees don't hurt when I bend over to pick up the laundry. Who is this Dr. Cool? I want to go check him out. That's what we want to do, is we want to give you resources, and I'll have all Dr. Cool's resources on this page, all his information. Check him out. Give him a call. Why don't you just briefly explain what you do? Because you do a lot of over the computer, telemedicine. Is it called? I'm not sure.
Yeah, telehealth,
Telehealth. It's
yes.
telemedicine, but
Yeah, telemedicine works too. But basically, yeah, since I graduated, we had a virtual clinic. It just happened that I would be talking or writing about things, and people in different cities and states would hear about what we do. So most of our, like over 90% of our patients are online. During this time, all of our patients are online, like the 10% that would drive in or fly in. But yeah, so basically that's what I do. It's all online. And but I am from Pittsburgh. So I have a physical clinic here too.
that's cool. So it's very easy to schedule an appointment, get online, work with Dr. Cool, and start diving into this. This is an investment, folks. You will never, ever, ever regret getting healthier. And I've always said, we're going to spend our money on something. It's going to be on a new shirt, tires for your car, a washing machine that breaks down December 23rd. It always happens that way. But when you invest in your health and you make that a priority, it's always going to come back. And I want to be alive when I'm 100, 110, 120 years old, still moving, still walking, driving. That's our goal, is to make you healthier and give you options. Any fun, exciting things coming up in your near future?
Oh man, I hope the world gets put back together at least at the time of recording right now. Things are still kind of crazy, but yeah, I mean, I'm excited. The silver lining is to this time for me is that we got to slow down a little bit, and I travel a lot for work, like speaking about the book in different cities, and I love doing that. Don't get me wrong, I love doing that. But it's nice to have a little bit of a pause to slow down and get to spend time with my kids. And because we see patients online, that hasn't changed that much. But I don't have anything planned right now because all my events through the year have been postponed indefinitely until the pandemic calms down.
Any last parting advice, words of wisdom that we can end with?
A mantra that we say in the clinic, like it's just an adage that we say, is you can't heal a body you hate. You can't shame or stress your way into wellness. And a lot of times people come from this place, we're talking about food and diet and all this stuff, is they think, okay, I'm going to just do another diet. And they just can't stand their body so much that they think they're going to shame their way into wellness. And that's just not going to work. You have to come from a place of, well, how can I be a good steward to what God has given me? And then from that will be the genesis of sustainable wellness. So to me, if I leave with some, words that I think it's the core of sustainable wellness, it's that.
That's awesome. And I so greatly appreciate you being on our show, spreading this information, not through Pittsburgh, but throughout the world. We want to make Pittsburgh the healthiest city. We want this to be maybe a platform that when we say City of Champions, it's just not about Super Bowl rings. It's about, we have healthy people walking to work, running, enjoying health, being fit. So Dr. Cool, thank you for being on the show. We greatly appreciate it.
Thank you.
Make sure you guys check out his resources, buy his book, and if you have a question, send him a note, give him a call. Thank you.